here with the picks of the week, starting with Netflix. I've got two movies. You've probably seen one, maybe you haven't seen the other. The first one is Wanted. The reason I'm recommending this is because I feel like it was fairly underrated. It was a really cool action movie, way over the top. Angelina Jolie was smoking hot in it. And a reason it makes the pick this week is because it just got added. It just got dropped on Netflix, so you may not even be aware that it's there yet. But I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you sort of watched it forever ago and sort of forgot about it, like I think probably most people, it's pretty sick. I mean, it's not great, but it's if you have no problems, if you're able to suspend disbelief in this one, it's really great. Chris Pratt is actually in it in one of his early movie roles, and he's just a total douchebag in it, so that's kind of funny. But you know, it's just a lot of fun, so I recommend checking that one out. And then a very different type of movie is Gold with Matthew McConaughey. Now this one, it's slow-paced. It's not particularly exciting, but it's really interesting. It's about a guy that basically funds this expedition to mine for gold in this area that's supposedly flush with gold. It's out in the jungle, and you do spend quite a lot of time out there with them in the movie, so that makes it that much more interesting. But Matthew McConaughey gained a ton of weight for this one. He looks horrible in it, and he does it well. I don't really know why this movie sort of got brushed under the rug and sort of, it didn't get great reviews. And all I can say is that there's a couple of times in the pacing where you feel like it's kind of getting lost, or it might be meandering a little bit, but it's a fairly minor nitpick. Other than that, it's really interesting, and unfortunately one a lot of people overlooked, but I'd recommend checking it out while you still can. It's been on Netflix for a little while, so I doubt it'll be available much longer. For Amazon, I recommend watching Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets. Now, just like my previous recommendation with Gold, Valerian got negative reviews and it sort of flopped. It didn't do well. A lot of people didn't see it. By no means is this a masterpiece, but this is the same creator as The Fifth Element and a bunch of others, and it looks amazing. Like, it looks really cool, and it's fun. It's got a nice, fun kind of sense to it. Not dissimilar from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's just not as tight and cohesive, and it just doesn't feel as good as Guardians of the Galaxy, in my opinion. But that said, if you like this genre, this sort of cyberpunk space genre, you definitely need to check this one out. It's got some weirdness to it, but look past that, and this one's really a blast. For another one that's really a blast on Amazon, Logan Lucky. Again, that's sort of the theme this time. It's like underrated movies. Logan Lucky is really one of the better movies of 2017. It's directed by Steven Soderbergh, who did all of the Ocean's movies, along with a bunch of others like Traffic, and I mean, he's an incredible director. But the reason I mentioned Ocean's is because this is another heist movie, but it's sort of in the country, and they're robbing the speedway, the motor speedway, and it's a good heist movie. It's interesting. You don't quite know what's going on, but you can sort of follow. It's really well crafted. The characters are a lot of fun. It's got a little bit of like a Coen Brothers vibe at times, just with kind of how the characters, the dialogue, just sort of the banter that they've got. So I highly recommend it. Hulu always gives me problems. I don't want to give up on Hulu, but it's always hard to find things on Hulu, which I guess is the value of me recommending stuff here. But Allied with Brad Pitt, and I think it's pronounced Marion Cotillard, that is a really good like World War II drama that, again, super underrated. I don't know if it's just overexposure on Brad Pitt's part, but this one's really well crafted. It's really interesting. It starts off with a bang, which I didn't expect, and then there's just sort of this drama that goes on throughout. The only downside to this one is it just doesn't really fit into your typical World War II movie with a lot of battle sequences, but that's not at all what this movie's about. It's basically about a high-ranking, the husband is a high-ranking officer, and so is the wife, or she was. I don't think she is anymore at the point in the story, but he is told that they suspect she's a spy, and he has to essentially give her disinformation and then wait, like I think it's like 3 or 4 days, basically wait over a long weekend to determine whether or not she feeds that misinformation. And during that time, he's trying to sneak around and figure out for himself whether or not she actually is a spy. So it's a really interesting story, and like I said, just really well done. It is absolutely one of the best movies you can currently catch on Hulu. My other Hulu recommendation is just a classic one that I just love. I think it just got recently added. But Demolition Man with Stallone and Wesley Snipes, this movie is just so much fun. Last week, if you're listening on the podcast, last week on the YouTube channel, I believe Friday's episode was a list of like movies that are so bad that they're good. Demolition Man almost fits into that category, except it's done so purposefully. It's essentially an action comedy, and the cool thing is the action in it is crazy. It's all this crazy futuristic action, and the comedy's pretty good. Like there's some really solid humor in it. It is totally done on purpose, so that's why it doesn't really fit into that category. But that said, it's hard to have more fun than when you watch a movie like this, and it's just really one of the more classic sort of, I think, late 80s, early 90s, just hilarious rated R action movies. Better Luck Tomorrow is a really good movie on HBO currently. It's directed by Justin Lin. He went on to do a couple of the Fast and the Furious movies, a couple of the good ones actually, and went on to do maybe half or a third of the second season of True Detective. So he's a decent director, but this was one of his early movies, and it features, it basically took some flack when it came out because it features Asian Americans, mostly teenage boys, doing some really bad things. You know, they're stealing from stores, they're doing coke, I don't want to give away too much. Stuff goes really bad for these kids. And there was a lot of flack, like, you shouldn't be depicting people that way. And actually, Roger Ebert was sort of stood out as someone that had literally stood up at, like, the Sundance Film Festival and said, no, this is the right thing to do. Asian Americans have not been depicted as unique individuals, meaning, like, not stereotypes, in movies. That this hasn't been done before, and this allows Asian Americans to have real roles where they're actually playing like a real character with struggles and complexities. And so I think he was spot on with that. The movie's really good, and it's not like, again, it's not stereotypical. It just happens to be a group of Asian teenagers. They could have been any race in this movie, which I think is kind of, it's just kind of perfect in that respect. So I really recommend that. And then an old one with Rutger Hauer, because honestly I had trouble finding stuff, but I know this is one a lot of people have missed. Real diehard fans will have seen this, but The Hitcher is a really good thriller. I know a lot of you probably have seen Joyride, the one with Candy Cane and the 18-wheeler. This is similar to that, except you see the guy the whole time. He's basically terrorizing people on the road. It's Rutger Hauer. He's always creepy looking, but he's great in this. And I really had a blast watching it. There is a remake that's essentially just a straightforward, not quite a shot for shot, but a very direct remake. You might as well just watch the original. So check that one out if you haven't seen it, if you have HBO. As far as rentals go, there's a couple this week. I tend to want to just recommend one, but I'm not really in love with either of these movies. But they're going to be your best bets for rentals this week if you want to spend a little bit of money. One is Death Wish. Now, the interesting thing about Death Wish is obviously it's a remake of the famous Charles Bronson movie, which is really just a fantastic movie. I had high hopes for this one. I don't know why. For some reason, I have faith in Eli Roth, even though he hasn't directed anything good in a really, really long time. So I don't know why I expected it to be good. It's not great. But it got eviscerated with reviews. I mean, like single digits on Rotten Tomatoes. And what a lot of the reviews were talking about is that it was not good timing. And that's because it features a lot of gun violence, and it came out shortly after the Parkland shooting. And they're right, but that does not then make it a bad movie. It's basically just a mediocre movie. In fact, the ratings on this one, I think the user ratings on Rotten Tomatoes are like 80%, and the critic ratings are like 8%. And this movie's somewhere in the middle. It's a 50%er type of a movie, maybe a 45. But if you want to watch a just kind of grungy Bruce Willis movie, check that one out. Another one that's got like a rough edge to it is Red Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence. Good little spy movie. It could be better. It's definitely not one of her best movies. It's got its little flaws, but it's a solid movie. Kind of a sexy spy thing. I say sexy. It's got some rough elements to it. So if you're sensitive at all, this one's not going to be one for you. But check it out. It's going to be definitely one of the better ones to have released this week. And then Solo, A Star Wars Story, is really the only thing coming out in theaters this week. Huge movie. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Han Solo is just easily my favorite character from the series. I do have some reservations about it. There were some major issues with the production on this one. By major issues, I mean the directors were fired. It's not even mid-production. It was late production. They brought in Ron Howard to finish it, and apparently he reshot way more than they expected him to. So obviously it needed a lot of work. But from what I've heard, the original directors, their names are escaping me at the moment, but they did the Lego movie, and for some reason Disney thought it would be a good idea to bring them in on the Han Solo origin story. And apparently they were making it really funny. Whether or not it was actually funny, but they were going really hammy with it. And Disney didn't want it. They cut them. That's interesting. The trailers look really sick. So I'm hoping it's good. Problem with Star Wars right now is it's overexposed. I mean, the last one just came out on Blu-ray. You don't even have time to sort of like develop like a hunger for Star Wars before they come out with a new one. So I do think Disney's sort of overplaying their hand with it. They're coming out a little bit too fast, and they're potentially going to ruin it by just a slow death of just like overexposure. If they don't sort of figure that out and get that in line, I think they need to maybe be spacing these out a little bit more. But that said, I'm going to want to go see this one. So this segment is actually from my weekly podcast that I put out every single Monday. If you like this video and you're new here, definitely click that subscribe button and click the little bell icon, because subscribing without it basically means nothing on YouTube now. But you'll get tons of movie recommendations every single week. It'll almost be impossible for you to run out of things to watch on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and other streaming services. If you like longer form content, definitely check out my podcast, review it. That'll definitely help this channel grow. On the podcast, I'll talk about almost anything. It's mostly movie related or channel related, but this past week we talked about Han Solo and what a Kessel Run is and what a parsec is. So we got really nerdy, but that's always fun stuff. But videos like this one, I'll keep making them as long as you keep watching them. But thanks for watching this one, and you will see me next time.